Chicago, Chicago, that toddling town, Chicago, Chicago, I'll show you around.
Speak of Chicago,
The corner was our magic, our music, our politics. Fires raised as tribal dances and war cries broke out of different quarters. Power to the people.
and just say Shot City. And if you don't know by now, I'm talking about Shot Town. And just say Shot City.
Welcome. This is the Chicago Sunnyside podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Nahez Meniu.
What's up, Chicago, Chicagoland, and beyond? This is Casabez Malkama, and we're happy to be bringing you this first inaugural episode of our podcast.
This first episode will really be aimed to give you an understanding of what to expect. Our plan for the next few weeks, months, years, as long as you'll have us. We'll be doing this episode a little differently for that reason, as it is introductory. This will be the one and hopefully only episode where you'll just be listening to Casabez and I.
Because we have a lot of exciting guests that we're lining up to present to you guys on a weekly basis. We're going to be bringing you community leaders, those who's in the grassroots, those who's pounding the pavement, who's working in the shadows and behind the scenes to make this city a better place for all of us.
And not only that, but also it's not just going to be me and you hosting. We'll even bring some other hosts on rotation through the show to help us out. Sometimes they'll know more about the topic, more about the issues we're addressing, and we'll be sure to bring them through. Casabez and I are both members of one of our favorite nonprofits doing a lot of work in Chicago, the Earth Center, or what's now known as KEPTA.
The Earth Center is an authentically African organization founded by a high priest and spiritual master, activist, and writer, revolutionary genius master, Abba Musa Morodinibig from Burkina Faso, or the Gormanche tribe.
You see him pictured in the middle on the wall behind us. His organization is really unique because as a founder, as a person who planted the seed that's grown into this great tree, he was totally outside of the box of our Western society, outside of the box of our Western conditioning and education, and therefore could bring a perspective that's totally fresh, totally new, and coming from a place that's already proven itself to master human society, human relations, social harmony. So the Earth Center, we know, has a lot to offer. That's why the brother sitting here and I and many of your other co-hosts are all members of that organization. But we are looking to network, build alliances with other organizations, other revolutionaries, other activists around Chicago, because we all have to live together. We all have to work together to make sure we're improving our communities for the sake of our children and those we will pass this community and this life on to.
Yes, and while this podcast will be unique because of the perspective that we're bringing, it will also be unique because of the interaction that we'll be having with our guests and bringing solutions that's based on intellectual honesty, based on solutions, seeking solutions, and not just trying to be right, not just finding dogmas to talk about, and not just coming from kind of like a belief perspective. We're coming to analyze, assess, and really strategize on how we can bring some solutions, and hopefully that can be useful to all of you.
We're working on this podcast, and we want to ensure that as this podcast grows, as this podcast comes together,
Train, bro.
You hear the train in the background, but it gets no more Chicago than that, bro. We don't need to worry about that. As this podcast comes together, we want to make sure that it offers to our listeners resources, insights. I hate to say hope, but hope because there's real solutions and communities to plug into around the city, that will improve your life. We want to make sure from week to week, the youth that are listening to our podcast, because they are frustrated, they are depressed, they are desperate, facing the problems of Chicago, facing the dangers of Chicago, facing the outlook on Chicago that mass media gives them. We want to make sure the resources this podcast is bringing and highlighting is bringing them improvements, practical solutions to their life that they can apply week to week. The parents that are listening, that are trying to raise their children better than they were raised, trying to give their children more exposure than they were given, we want to make sure you see changes in your life and the life of your families week to week.
Yeah, because let's face it, the so-called leadership that we've been having here in our city and abroad, throughout the nation and beyond, they haven't succeeded in any attempts, whether they're honest attempts or whether it's just lip service, who are we to judge? But let's just judge the results. The results have not been good for us. With all the Build Back Better Chicago and Build a Better Chicago and the empowerment zones and all of this that we've been trying to do in Chicago, still the hood, and we still facing the same problems that we have been facing. We still, as Chicago, been facing the same stigmas that we've been facing for decades. Let's face it, whoever may be trying to put themselves in a position, on TV, social media, what have you, big name people who are saying, they're going to do this, they're going to do that, whether they're politicians, whether they're community leaders, there's still a lot more work that needs to be done. So we take the perspective that, if what we've been doing hasn't been working, it's time to try something that's coming from a different place, that's coming from a different perspective. We can't just reinvent the wheel and keep experimenting on our children's futures. We have to come with the perspective that's been known to work for some people somewhere. So that's what we're bringing.
Exactly. And I see you're not calling out names on this first episode.
No, it's a little early.
We all know that those, many of our leaders are sponsored. And when your leader is sponsored by someone, then they're controlled by someone. And they're controlled by wanting to make sure that the stream of income they're getting doesn't stop. But this podcast won't be about that. We're not paid for this podcast, and this podcast will have a fearlessness to attack issues from a place of honesty that hopefully elsewhere, but definitely, will be unique, at least from mass media and the level of political leadership. We'll be looking for the grassroots leaders that are ready to sacrifice for the betterment of their community, the betterment of their families, the betterment of where the city is going. And that's really where our focus will be. We're calling it the Chicago Sunnyside because no matter if you're on the north side, benefiting from the wealth up there, or you on the west side, hurting from the lack of wealth out there, or you on the south side benefiting from the culture that we see on the south side, wherever you are, and it's not just a lack of wealth on the west side.
I was gonna say, I'm from the south side, but you're gonna hate
the genius. Don't trust me. I'm not hating on the west side. The west side is the first place I came to when I came to Chicago, and that's where I found Master Naba and the Earth Center when I came to Chicago. So there's a lot of genius. Any place you see a lack of what's called wealth in the modern world, that's where the genius brews. Mm-hmm. So we'll be scouring the city and the sides of the city, looking for the sunny side of the city, where the light is being maintained, is being protected, and is being shared with the community to improve the quality of life for our brothers and sisters around the city and even beyond the city. Hopefully we're getting listeners from outside of Chicago, because at the end of the day, we all face the same basic problems. We all have to eat quality, healthy food, mm-hmm. and there's a lot of food deserts in the city. We'll be tackling that. We all have to maintain positive, harmonious, cohesive relationships, and our families are breaking down. We know that. We all have to bring healthy children, and right now there's an epidemic where our women are dying in the communities of color just to bring children, just to bring babies, something that we've done since the beginning of humanity. Now it's like, because we put in our trust in those outside of our communities, we put in our trust in systems outside of ourselves, we dying. involved in self-destruction. So we'll be tackling those kind of issues on every side of the city, looking for resources that can give you some refuge from that destruction cycle we see ravaging not just Chicago, but all the big cities around the modern world.
There's only one thing that disperses the darkness, and that's the light. And what
Bars.
and what kind of darkness, what is darkness really? It's confusion. It's kind of superstition. It's living with your world kind of like without knowing where you're going, without knowing what step to take. So you kind of just have to believe that the next step you take is going to lead you where you want you to go, but you can't really see in front of you. So what do we have to disperse that is really just clear thinking. It's clear thinking, it's analysis, it's intellectualization to bring solutions, to look and analyze and see what's in front of us, assess it, and say, okay, what's the path going to be to move forward? It's not every time that some problem comes up and we just react with the first thing that, maybe the news tells us to do, or the first thing that our emotions are telling us to do. That's not every time that we end up where we want to be. Most of the time we end up falling into some kind of a trap or some kind of a pitfall, and then we're worse off than we were before the problem started. So for that reason, we're going to be bringing you thinking, well thought out analysis, because for too long we've allowed our media sources to just tell us what to think. And it's really just mental laziness that we don't go check behind our media sources to see if what they're telling us is really what it is. If what they're telling us to think is really what it is, what someone says, what someone did, is it really how they're presenting it or no? So we have to be looking behind all of that and see what's the truth of the matter and get to the heart of it, so we can come with some real actual solutions.
But we know there's a challenge in that. And I know Biz, there's a challenge in that. We both grew up in this system and this society where one company controls many media sources. So even when you try to look behind one, you run into another name really controlled by the same conglomerate. So we understand there's a challenge in researching behind, but that's really where we got to put our efforts together and really do what's best for our people. Really highlight and uncover the power that the people have, because the people have power. It's just when the people stop relying on ourselves and then we allow others to dictate what we're going to do for ourselves, then that's when we led away from that light. But the fact of the matter is, even when we're in darkness, light is still shining somewhere. And that's really, connecting back to the motto, the philosophy of our favorite organization, our favorite home of revolutionaries, well for revolutionaries to come and drink from, the Earth Center, which says the sun never sets, it is man who moves away from the light. No matter how difficult the situation we facing is, somewhere the light is still shining, and this podcast will really be trying to bring that light on whatever issue we facing, whatever challenge we facing in the city, trying to bring the light that will help us, guide us out of those problems and to overcome those problems.
And the truth of the matter is, when the light shines on something, sometimes that thing is going to be ugly. Sometimes it's going to smell. Sometimes you're not going to believe what you see, and you're not going to want to see it. You're not going to want to look at it. But hey, if you have a sink full of dirty dishes you haven't washed in 3 months, you can't get through those dishes without, uncovering some smells and some stains of, I'm speaking from experience.
I know you are. I'm trying to know what it is.
So it's important though. Whatever we want to do to clean up things, we're gonna have to uncover some things that we're not gonna want to face. And it's gonna be difficult. We're gonna be having to ask difficult questions, and we're gonna have to have difficult conversations. And we like to think that's still okay, even in the age of cancel culture.
Yes, definitely. And nobody grows from comfort. If canceling is on the other side of discomfort, but discomfort brings us growth, we'll just be canceled in one community, and then another community will notice and they will want to hear the truth that we bring in. Because wherever we are now, whatever our communities, our families are suffering from, are being ailed by, it's only the truth that heals. It's only the truth that will help us recover. So we'll be working hard to uncover that truth, to highlight that truth, and to bring that truth to our listeners. The truth of what the people are doing to really get us out of where we're suffering, where we're being pulled back, where we're degenerating, and bring us to a place where we can again kind of enjoy the dignity, the integrity that humanity can hold, that humanity has upheld before. We in Chicago, many activists, as you see behind us on the wall, have done a lot of great work here. Many people have lived in harmony with the land here, with the lake here, with the powers of nature here. If we've walked away from the methods they used to achieve that harmony, to achieve that genius, to achieve that positive progress, then we have to look at what we're doing and find a better way. Look at what's been done, where it got people, and if that's where we want to get, then we change what we're doing. It's not going to be a comfortable process, but we're here dedicated to this. This brother and I have been dedicated to community work, community education, cultural education for the past 20 years. So we're not new to this, but we are looking to bring a new platform to the work that we're doing and make sure that we can connect with others in the city that are really doing the same work. But I say that, and we will be using this to build a network, to build a web of activists around Chicago, but we're doing it from the perspective of indigenous culture. And in indigenous culture, as this brother can tell you, because this brother has lived with me for a while now, we take the perspective of family is family because we challenge each other. This brother and I challenge each other all the time. I'm sure you're going to catch that on the episodes. But we also going to be challenging those we interview. Those we interview to either uncover and get to the bottom of the problems we face, or those we interview to uncover the resources and the good work that they're doing to bring practical solutions. Then we're going to be challenging them with thoughtful questions, intelligent investigations, and we hope that all of that brings a benefit to you in your life on a practical level.
And one thing we're standing on is that we're politically non-binary. We are not here representing one political side. And I think it's important to note that Chicago, we know, is a very liberal city, but a lot of the liberalism, liberalism as a whole, we keep seeing more and more things being introduced that it's like, okay, this is new. All right, I don't know about this one, but it's like, okay, if we're liberals, we need to go with it and we need to support it. But we can't keep supporting things that don't make sense. So we're going to be challenging a lot of the ideologies that are out here and a lot of the, ways of functioning, the ways of belief that we see out here. So, be ready for that, because we're not going to be pulling any punches on different topics. But for the most part, we want to stay focused on the positive things, the sunny side of things, but in a way that's honest, in a way that's, showing the integrity that we're not just here to kind of like make friends, but we're here to make allies. And you build allies by making sure that there's accountability as well. So we're going to be asking the difficult questions in our analysis of different current events, different issues going on, different topics of interest, but also difficult questions of our guests too. So if you're one of our potential guests who's checking this out to see if you want to come on the show, just be ready for that. We're not here to be antagonistic to anybody and disrespectful to anybody, but we're here to, help build this world together. So you might have a difficult question for us too, and that's fine.
Definitely. People clean people. We're not here thinking we're just here to clean others, clean other organizations. We're here because we're looking on what better to do to clean the work that we're doing as well. And like he said, we will be committed to bringing intelligent, honest broadcasting, honest questioning, interviewing, and as he said, hashtag political non-binary. That's one of his favorite lines right now, so I'm sure you're going to hear that a lot.
Yes, you're going to be hearing it. So we want to hear from you, the public, those of you who are listeners. If you have a question you want us to talk about, if you have a critique of the show, if you have a suggestion for the show, if you have even an event or an organization or an organizer, a leader that you want us to cover, maybe a potential guest for us, we're open to all your suggestions, all your questions, whatever you want to say. We're open for that. So check in the description. We're going to have a link in there that you can pop in and leave your question, comment, concern, suggestion, whatever.
And this podcast is really about, the fundamental aspects of life that we face. Mm-hmm. So those things that really sit on your heart, that really torment your mind, that really keep your spirit out of being at peace when you lay your head down to sleep at night, those are the type of issues we want to cover here. Because we've been young growing up in this society. We know the desperation that it brings. We know the depression that it brings. We know the feeling of where am I going to turn to? How am I going to fit into a society where it just seems like to be educated just is about how I could better exploit the next person, and I don't know if I want to do that. Mm-hmm. So, make sure that what we're addressing, who we're talking to, what we're looking to solve is speaking and resonating with the actual problems that are inside of you, that you have inside, that you're looking for a way out of.
Some of the topics that you can expect to hear from us, especially in the first few episodes, we're going to be talking about education. We're going to be talking about community, family, relationships, how we interact with each other, how we're raising our children, how we treat our elders and our parents, and also how we sustain ourselves. So food, clothing, shelter, especially food, has been a big topic of discussion. Like my brother said, we have many food deserts in the city, but even when you do have access to food, we don't know where it's coming from. I just bought a frozen pizza, which is already like, me showing my desperation with just trying to fill my stomach, but then I read the back of it and it said made with bioengineered ingredients. And I'm like, oh,
exactly. Because now even, the meat eaters in the city, now you're even trying to, eat healthy. Maybe you cook your meat. Now you find out your meat's coming from a lab and it never, lived on a farm.
It was a cheese pizza, bro.
I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about all of the problems we facing in the food industry. It's been sold away. We all know in America, our health, our livelihood has been sold away to the largest bidder. So we're going to be tackling those kinds of things, and we're going to be tackling those kind of root issues first as our priorities, because you might want to talk about the danger, the murder rate, the gun issues, and the violence in Chicago, in Chirac. But
we don't call it Chirac, man.
But
Spike Lee's from New York. He hates us.
But regardless of those things being there, those things are there because there are underlying issues. If there wasn't problems in the family, if there wasn't problems in the community, if there wasn't problems with the education of each child coming up in Chicago, then there wouldn't be problems with self-destruction on the, that you see among the children. The children only follow where the adults have taken society. And it's not the first time in human history that we've seen self-destruction, suicide among the children, murder, homicide among the children, among the youth. And it's not the first time we've seen it, and we've seen before where it's been solved. So we'll be looking at, how it's been solved before and what people are doing around the city to solve it, but we'll really be attacking it from those fundamental issues of what needs to be solved first before the details can rectify themselves.
Because it's been too long we've been trying to rely on the police and the jails, the public school system, the medical system, and our people are still out here dying, I mean, we don't even talk about the medical system. The medical system is the biggest killer out here, way more than all the gangs and police and all of this. But keep dependent on these same systems, and, they continuing to produce the same results that they're producing, whether that's what they meant to do or whether it's not. I feel like it's probably intentional. But either way, the result is the result. And if we don't want to get the same result, we can't keep depending on the same system. So how are we going to be able to produce the good results for ourselves that we need to see for our children and our future generations?
So we're really going to be tackling those kind of issues on this podcast. Who and make sure that we're relying on ourselves. Make sure we're asking ourselves the question, who are we following? Because we have to follow a person into that kind of confusion. We have to follow somebody into that kind of confusion. That kind of confusion is not even natural, to where I will go to a medical system that's killing the people it's supposed to be healing, that's causing more problems than the people it's supposed to be medicating, and then I will just voluntarily walk that way. I can't follow. I mean, it's not natural for me to rely on a prison system. What sense does that make? Like, I'm thinking that the prison system and putting more people in cages is solving my problem. It's just like we do a lot of things today that don't make sense just because it's what we're doing. It's what society is leading us towards. So we're going to be tackling all of that kind of mindlessness on the social level on this podcast by bringing it in confrontation with the thought processes, the intelligence, and the proactivity of the community and the people in the community themselves.
Yeah.
we have a lot of organizations. We have a history of that in Chicago with brothers like Fred Hampton, who you see behind us. There's community organizations that were started to really try to tackle those problems and stop relying on the big machines that the society has built that have been overtaken and was kidnapped by
There's still
by
people out here
profits.
doing it. There's still people out here doing it, and we just need to, bring them to the public, because it's like, there's programs that people can do in their neighborhoods, on their blocks, but how you can't take that to the whole city by yourself. But if there's a model that's working, then other people can use it where they are, and then that's how we kind of spread the light that we're trying to shine everywhere. So that's an idea, to give an idea of the type of things we'll be talking about, these type of community organizations and movements. Because, hey, calling the police is like, relying on the police is like saying, will I call the police on my kid, without thinking that I failed my kid? Because if I had to call the police on him, that means that I didn't teach him right. But we can extend that responsibility outwards, not just with our own families, but saying we want to take responsibility for our communities to be better places than what they are. So it starts with education. It starts with teaching. There's a indigenous African proverb, that says, if you don't teach somebody, you give him a chance to hurt you.
Yes. So we look forward to this journey and really finding who's taking responsibility, how they're taking responsibility, and how that responsibility can inspire us to take responsibility for our own lives and put into apply those solutions that maybe someone else has found to our own lives, so that we can avoid the same problems, or we can overcome the problems we already face. So in the description of wherever this is posted, you will find a link to where you can submit your questions, your concerns, the things that are preventing you, that you face in the city, frustrating you, challenging you, so that we can address those topics, and you can submit to us those people that are addressing them, that you feel deserve their flowers, and this podcast can bring a platform to them to present them with those flowers and present them with an opportunity to present what they've been doing and what they're doing and how you can benefit and get involved.
So once again, we're just excited and proud to be bringing this to you. And, it's been a minute, Chicago, since we've really been serving you guys with the media. So we're happy to be back on the scene. And we look forward to hearing from you, talking to you, seeing you out in the community, out in the streets, and, working together to build this city and to build this world.
Peace. We look forward to it.
Peace and blessings.
Life can be so sweet on the sunny side of the street.
If you don't know by now, I'm talking about Shot Town.